As I pondered this Sunday's upcoming readings, I thought of my classmate Harry Monaco. Now, Harry and I were together in the novitiate, and our novitiate was in Wilmington, Delaware. And Harry was a pretty solid guy. No, he had joined the Franciscans when he was quite young. Then he left the Franciscans, joined the Trappists, thought he'd give monastic life a try. And then he left that. And so when I met him, he was making his return to the Franciscans. So he had a pretty solid prayer life. And Harry went on to go on for further studies, and he was ready to embark on ministry. But then he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And initially, he questioned God. Why did I go through all those studies? I'm ready to teach people. I'm ready to journey with people. And now I'm diagnosed with this terminal cancer. But then he began to realize is that God was giving him graces that God didn't give him before. And he was witnessing the presence of God in his suffering more than he did before in his life. The other thing is he saw it as a labor pain where he was going to be born into eternal life. Now, pretty solid perspective. God obviously gave him the grace. Now, in November, we remember our loved ones who have passed away. We also remember those who gave themselves in war. And we'd always dare to dream that one day there'll be no more war. And really, that's the promise in the second reading from the book of Revelation, where there will be a new heaven and a new earth. There'll be no more tears, no more sadness, no more death. And this is speaking, obviously, of heaven. But we can't lose sight that heaven is present with us here and now. And, we have to bring heaven to others. Our world is constantly being crucified, or we are crucifying others. We can think of Hurricane Melissa. We can think of the tragedy in Sudan, and the list goes on. And so either creation is crucifying us, or creation's being crucified, or we are crucifying one another, and it just seems to never end. But yet there will be resurrection. But and we have to hold the two together, because, if we focus only on resurrection, that's not the reality of the world we live in. But yet we are constantly resurrected to new life. We are constantly receiving God's mercy, receiving God's love, receiving God's forgiveness. We can begin again with part of our new creation that we celebrate at baptism. But then also, we're a communion of sinners. And we're in solidarity here. Let's not point fingers at people. Let's accept the responsibility together. And, let's continue to receive the graces we need, the blessings we need, so that we can be in solidarity with one another. We can ultimately allow God's love to flow through our hearts to others. And this is really what Jesus does in our gospel reading. Jesus has compassion. This is a widow who has no one to really support her. She's helpless. She's hopeless. She is grieving the loss of her only son. Now, this ought to make us think of Jesus on the cross. Mary is at the foot of the cross. This is her only beloved son. And here he is dying on a cross. And what did Jesus do is he cared for people. He had compassion on people. He taught people with encouragement. He challenged people as well, but he challenged them to a life of mercy. Live a life of mercy. Don't get caught up in the little things of life that we often fight about. Remember mercy. Remember love. Because love will continue into eternity. And relationships will also continue into eternity. During the funeral liturgy, one of the things that's said right at the very end is one day we will see our loved one again. That's our hope. This is, and Christ, as the first reading points out, is the one that makes us righteous. We are righteous in the hands of God through the death and resurrection of Christ and through the graces God gives us. And so let us allow people like Harry to continue and to encourage us in our own suffering. And also may we continue to allow our suffering to help us to be compassionate with those in our lives as we gather around the table, Lord, to remember many people, to be encouraged by many people, so we can continue to resurrect others to new life through love and mercy.